I work in HR, I don't have to do sales. Maybe you know that phrase. And when it comes to recruiting, we might have an issue here. The question is, do recruiters need to have sales skills? Is there any sustainable approach to recruiting that includes sales, or should you better just focus on HR knowledge, expertise in employment law or similar? We all know that recruiters are anything between famous and infamous. So sometimes you hear raving reviews about application processes on glassdoor.com, for example. However, on the other hand, you way more often hear negative reviews where people say that recruiter was, let's say, not the best. And we have a wide range, a wide variety of different people working in recruiting. Some people are very well trained, very professional, very target oriented. They wanted to go to recruiting and they're specifically trained for it. Others, however, are not very well trained. They just ask something, or they have some sort of template. So they ask the same question for absolutely anyone, or they have their secret question, which they just like personally. And the whole judgment and the whole evaluation of the interview is more based on personal preferences, impressions, but not on science, facts, proof, and evidence. We need talents, and we all know that we do. The question is, how do we get talents when people act like this? Recruiting is the decisive factor here, and we have to talk about that. We have to do it at least better. If not the best, we need to know how to do it better. First things first, where should we start? And the question remains, do we need sales skills? Yes or no? The beginning of that always is targeting and prospecting. You need to talk to the right people in the right place. And we all know job ads aren't enough. Job ads are necessary, and still about 3 out of 4 people find their jobs via job ads, but you need more than the classic job ad. For example, you need programmatic advertising, often falsely described as banner advertising. Yes, you have certain internet banners that suddenly pop up somewhere, but there is a very technically complex process behind that of online bidding procedures and online bidding processes where you need specialized people to do that. You can't do it on the side. If you do so, good luck, you're going to fail anyway. You need specialists for that. You need, for example, also lead ads. Lead ads are what you, for example, put on social media where people, let's say you're looking for a trainee, and people see the ad, but before they can apply, they have to ask or answer a couple of questions. Typical questions are, do you have a driver's license? Can you work during the evenings? Can you work during the weekends? Or can you work in a shift system? Then people answer these questions. When you get the right questions, then when you get the right answers, then people can apply, usually with first name, last name, and phone number, and then you call them and take it from there. However, the overarching theme here is you know a target audience and you know where they hang out. And by the way, you need to talk to them in an appropriate manner what they like. Just going on social media and saying we are now the modern company, we are anywhere, that is not what works. For example, I've seen rapping bankers, I've seen dancing soldiers, I've seen people working in public service, singing along and dancing, and all of that seems to be, quirky and new. We have a new agency, and it failed miserably because it is what young people call cringe. You need to know by analysis where does your target audience hang out and how to address them on exactly that level in an appropriate manner. And when we talk about that, recruiters have to know the content of their campaigns, because nothing's worse compared to when someone says, I really liked your video, and you say, I don't really know what's in there. What did you like about that? That does really not give a professional impression to anyone. So very important is recruiters need to know the content of their campaigns. They need to know where people hang out, and that as a very beginning is a sales skill. Sales, they know where the people hang out so they can talk to them, but it goes on from there. The next level is relationship building, and the key word here is reciprocity. When you take care of someone, then usually the other side takes care of you because they know that you care, so they start to care as well. I give you a very simple example of how it should not work. One of my friends now applied for a job, and after 10 days after applying, the only thing he had so far was an automated email that the application arrived. And that company was whining all over the place that it's so hard to find talent. Here are the news. When someone who's highly qualified with the dedicated master's degree you want to have, and then they apply for you, you have to give them feedback in 3 days' time or quicker by a human being with some sort of first contact, or at least with a phone call or an email telling them what the procedure will be. So you need reciprocity, and that needs to be done. If you are unable to do so, you shouldn't be surprised that people get interested in someone else. Reciprocity. Someone else cares, so they care about someone else. That, by the way, relationship building, again, a sales skill. If we're moving on, when you get into contact and you get to certain points where you say, we don't agree here, what do we do now? You have a certain offer, and then you talk about the offer. That's pitching and negotiating. Again, a sales skill. You need to train your recruiters on negotiations and pitching. If you're unable to do that, it always means your offer doesn't come along interesting enough in a bad pitch. And as soon as you have some sort of disagreement, you will give everything away because people don't know how to negotiate. So pitching and negotiating needs to be professionally trained. And by the way, when you have interview on different levels, different rounds, please keep the number of rounds appropriate. The more rounds you put in there, the higher the offer has to be. Please only allow professionally trained and appropriate people into these rounds. Do not allow anyone who says, I'd like to talk with the applicant because I like to make myself a bit more important. It's good for the annual appraisal interview because I can say I did recruiting and then I ask for a salary raise. So only put people in there who are really important for the process and who are professionally trained to do that. Anything else doesn't make any sense. As soon as you go through pitching and negotiation, you will probably drag through a couple of rounds or go through a couple of rounds, and then next step, communication and problem solving. Always be proactive, always be open, always be clear on what's possible and what's not possible. However, always have a certain flexibility. I give you two examples where you should and can or should not and cannot be flexible. So for example, when someone applies for the reception job in your organization, you work in a huge office building and on the ground floor there's a reception, you are looking for someone working there. And they say, what about remote work? So first, yes, there is an approach that even this job is now available with remote work. When you have the right system installed and with TV screens and everything, you can have that as a remote working job. However, it is not too common so far. I've seen it in London a couple of times, LA, Chicago, Seattle, New York City, mostly in the US I've seen that so far. However, it is not the usual moment that you have someone sitting at home doing remote work while working for a reception. And usually companies say, look, this is an on-site job. If this is not for you, maybe apply for a different job. And that's perfectly fine, except when, of course, you have the system installed, then offer flexibility and you will find more and more suitable talent, often in a better agreement for both sides of you. When you, for example, on the other hand, have a senior developer, someone who does software development, for example, for SAP, and that's a real world example, and the person says, you say, well, 3 days working from home, I like to work 5 days from home. And the answer of that employer was, well, we really can't give you 5 days because we want to have you in the office for the culture. And of course, this can be a valid approach. However, when you want to have people in the office for the culture, you offer amazing work events, you have an amazing interior, everything was done by workplace consulting, high level, top cutting edge interior to really cooperate and collaborate. And what you saw in that building was you have long hallways, left and right are office doors. In these office doors, people are sitting, everyone has their name on the door, and they are all working pretty much on their own in their offices. So when you tell people that is the culture, or when you tell people, look at these amazing big office of cubicles where anyone sits in their personal prison cell, and you come along with culture, then people see that you are lying, and that doesn't create any trust. So be aware that you need a certain level of flexibility when it comes to problem solving. We have workforce and talent shortage. If you don't move and just say, that's the offer, take it or leave it, in a situation where, let's face it, when you do software development, most likely many of these jobs can be done at any time as long as you hold the deadline, except for a couple of meetings, and these often aren't that many. If you have no flexibility, don't expect flexibility from the other side. So communication, problem solving, again, a sales skill. Last but not least, you have a closing. And closing, again, is an art. And I don't mean this awful book, The Art of the Deal. That's one of the worst books you can read about negotiations or business from all books I've read. So when you want to have closing, you need to be able to put a mild, certain, polite, but target-oriented pressure on people. When you took care of someone and you agreed on everything, why wait for a long time? Always be after the person and communicate a bit more, contact them again and say, hey, could you come to a conclusion now? And tell them we'd like to have an answer by XYZ date. Because closing means you push towards getting the business. And that, again, drum roll, is a sales skill. So we can agree as recruiters, you need to have sales skills if you like it or not. However, how do you put all of that in place? Because often people are put off when you say, hey, you need to have a sales job or a sales attitude in recruiting. Many people are not there to do that. Many people say, I'm in recruiting because I want to make the world a better working place and I want to hire the best talent so the company can thrive, best projects, best talent, yada, yada, yada. They usually don't say, I'd like to work in sales. Some people understood the drill and say, I have a sales mindset and these are the people you need to hire because they understood what recruiting is about, getting the job done and hiring the right people, not just someone. So you need to train people professionally, not the online class for $49. That's not going to make the cut. So you need to train them professionally by professional trainers, coaches, usually an ongoing process, needs to be target oriented and tailored to what they need. In addition to that, you need to have KPIs and CSFs. KPIs, it's the numbers game, key performance indicator. So you need to put numbers in there so people know what will they be measured against. However, in addition to that, the CSFs, the critical success factor, which are the soft factors, also need to be considered. You haven't really won anything when they say, well, you hit the numbers goal, but anyone thinks we're an awful company with a really pushy sales squad in recruiting. Then you haven't really won anything because people will communicate that. Also, I need to add, you need to give reason for your KPIs. When you simply say, here are 15 applications we just received, out of these 15, 3 people will be invited for an interview. I tell you, they will find 3 people. Even if they're wildly non-qualified, they will find 3 people. So you talk to non-qualified people, and then either you are lucky and some manager says, look, this doesn't make sense, we're not going to hire any of them. Or you have one of these managers who said, well, it gives a bad impression if I now hire no one from them. Also, I put up that sales goal for recruiting. So we invited 3 and we're going to hire one out of these 3. And then you hire someone who's wildly non-qualified and anyone loses faith and anyone loses support for that kind of recruiting process in your organization. It's too slow then, not target oriented, and also the result is horrible. So be sure that the KPIs and CSFs are spot on defined with proof, reason, evidence, scientific backing for your numbers is important. However, that's not all. When you put all of what we just discussed here in place, you always need to be aware that any kind of adjustments need to be made in due course of the process. It's a constant change. You adapt, you justify new spendings, or you justify to not spend anything on that platform anymore. You always redirect to the right campaign moment, and that is a constant moment of change. You need to, of course, you need to communicate your benefits. You need to have a continuous service improvement process here. And this kind of continuous improvement is something which often leaders already said. Maybe you remember when leaders said, there is always an opportunity in change. Seize the opportunity, or see the opportunity. See or seize, whatever it is. For decades, leaders told people, you need to see the opportunity in change. You need to see the positive tide in change. Well, now it's time for leaders to step up and live what they said before, walk the talk. Because for a very long time, leaders could simply say, well, we offer work. We let ourselves down to offer you work. So you need to do whatever we want, that we put you into a paid job. And these times are over. And it doesn't look like they're going to change anytime soon. Now you have to change. And I just give you a direction where we're heading now. In the UK and the US, we already have, for many jobs, signing bonuses, which in Europe, mainland Europe, often is unthinkable. I give you an example. You have a senior SAP engineer and you say, hey, this is our offer, and we both agree on the offer. And then the other side says, well, I still have 3 interviews incoming. I'd like to talk to them as well. What you say is you get £5,000 bonus when you sign by Friday or earlier. And that is to, by the way, sales technique again, that is to put up some mild, polite pressure towards someone that they sign with you instead of signing with someone else. And in addition to that, we often now in the UK pay people, at least from a certain position, pay them for their interview time. So we say, and when you now say, well, we also pay for travel, that's not the point here. We pay them for the time. We pay them 50, 100, 150 pounds for the interview, sometimes even more, especially when you want to get self-employed people into contracts or into a fully fledged employment. They simply say, look, I don't know if it's worth talking to you. So just to be on the safe side here, I'm going to charge you my usual hours for the interview. And when you consider the person qualified and trustworthy, you are going to pay that. Often leaders go up the wall when they hear that. Here are the news. Talent and workforce shortage are getting worse. We have still, when we look into the birth rates, there is still not the lowest level where we are. It still goes down a bit. In addition to that, into a new study just published last week showed that many young people are getting their main news source from TikTok. So without saying anything against TikTok, but the level of education probably is not going to improve when you get everything you know by TikTok. And in addition to that, due to cost of living crisis, income which do not accordingly go up, we have less and less people studying because more and more people see it as a financial risk to study, so they go for other jobs, which makes the workforce shortage and the talent shortage even worse. So you will have to open the wallet wider if you want to keep up. And by the way, before someone screams, "Oh, some leftist telling me what to do," I'm somewhere in between liberalism and conservative. So I'm with the liberals in Switzerland. So I can tell you I am not left-wing. I'm just telling you the facts. And no matter if you're conservative or not, denying the facts has never been part of the game. So how do we put all that together? When now someone says, "I work in HR, I don't have to do sales," that is simply outdated. If you have anyone on staff who still says that, professionally train and coach them. If they want to keep that attitude, they will not make any career, and it's questionable if they should stay on staff. You need people who have the people expertise, at the same time the recruiting expertise, plus the HR and employment law expertise. So now you see how complicated the whole thing really is, plus the sales skills that you need to close the deal and get the talent in. As long as you train people professionally and give them that skill set, you will thrive and get the best talents into your organization, and I wish you all the best doing so. And when you now say, "Wow, that was a lot," yes, it was, because it is a quite critical situation that we're facing here. If you now would like to discuss anything, just send me an email, nb@nb-networks.com. You find the email address in the show. By the way, if you want to have something very specific, you need some sort of training session, speaking, coaching, you can drop me an email for that as well. However, we can also just talk about whatever you like to talk about. nb@nb-networks.com is my email address. You find my email address in the show notes of this podcast. What I also put there is my LinkedIn, so we can connect on there. And you can also just go to my website, nb-networks.biz, and then we just take it from there. Second aspect, which is important here, we have live sessions. So if you like to join us for a live session, go to expert.nb-networks.com. When you're there, you can simply put your email address in there, and you only receive one email every Wednesday morning. It's 100% content ad-free guarantee in there. You find free access to anything I published, because sometimes people say, "Hey, I have a leader who likes to listen to what you say, but that person doesn't like podcasts. Do you have something in writing?" Yes, it's all there. So feel free to just sign up there, and then we take it from there. Also, in the leadership letter, you find the next date when we have a live session, plus the access to access that live session. We just had one last week that went very successfully. It was very well visited. Thank you very much for the support here. It's available, by the way, in English and German, so feel free to take your international colleagues with you. However, the most important aspect is the third one. Apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive changes that you obviously want to see in your organization. I wish you all the best doing so. If you need any kind of help, contact me anytime. I'm available 24/7. Looking forward to hearing from you. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.